Hello viewers, and welcome back to the multiplayer comp stomp. The main team here, and in this video we get to see a little bit of new war, and I get to keep some promises from earlier videos. The first promise that I get to keep is that I said I would get to naval production, and you saw a little bit of it in the last video. And I guess if you pause the video, if you're paying attention, or you're just looking at my Maui statue city there in the previous video, you might have noticed that I snuck Heroic Epic in there as well, and I've settled my great generals there. So that's pretty much the only city that I'm going to have building naval units, and it's going to be plenty. And each galleon that comes out of there is actually able to go up to navigation 2. So eat your heart out there, Vikings. My ships are even faster than yours. And rather than trying to move all the way through QNL and Mackey's land, and even through Germany possibly, I can just cut straight to where I want to go. So Mackey's working on Germany at present, and no one's yet going after the Vikings or Carthage. So I'm pretty much preparing for war against those guys now that my war with Pakal is finished up. Also, in the previous city segment, I agreed to give a city over to MLS. He was going to capture it, but I guess he didn't bring enough siege, and he lost all his units. So I was getting impatient. I just wanted the war to end because of war weariness, and I didn't want to deal with peace vassalling or anything like that. So I just took the city and gave it to him. It was just faster that way. So yeah, and now that I have cannons, because I did go straight for steel, finally got cannons after they didn't matter in the war against Pakal, I can attack pretty much anything as long as I can protect the cannons. And that's a big if, but really only cavalry are an issue for a really, really long time, so I wasn't too worried at this point. I control so much land and so much production, easily number one in manufactured goods, that it just wasn't too much of an issue. And yeah, Dan finished working over his older empire there as well. So yeah, that's how I usually recommend dealing with naval production. Get a couple cities, sometimes one, sometimes 3 or 4. Put dry docks in them, and just hammer out a whole bunch of ships. Especially if you have factories in power later, you can easily hammer out the metal navy ships too. Like, you get 40 hammers and just your basic forge factory, power plant, and a dry docks, and you can put out destroyers like every 2 turns. Like, it's not that hard to build up a pretty impressive navy quickly, even if you aren't the Dutch. So there's that. And the other thing I promised I would cover is permanent alliances. Now with a human, all you have to do is get to communism or fascism, usually communism, and click on it and have both people agree. Nice and simple. With the AI, they have to be at a certain disposition. Most of them require friendly. I forget who doesn't require friendly. And on top of that, you need to have a defensive pact or share a war for like a long period of time. It's either 20 or 40 turns. I forget which. So if you're doing those deity one city challenges and just looking for a permanent ally, you really do need to get somebody to friendly and get a defensive pact as soon as possible before your resident culture whore goes hog wild on you and you lose to culture victory. So that's how permanent alliances work. Alright, now on to the questions. First one's by Little Elf 10. How can I break a stalemate in war? And Stop summed it up pretty well and bring more troops. But really, what you should be doing is going into war with sufficient troops to begin with. That way you don't fall into the trap of stalemating in war and running into problems with either a peace vassal issue or the AI declares on you to take your target as a vassal, or you don't get screwed over by the AI getting a new powerful military tech. You really want to go in there with enough troops. And I covered it in a previous video, I believe, that until later in the game, you want roughly half your units to be siege. You still also want to make sure you can handle their stack, and if you can get open borders, it's pretty easy to find their stack. And then it's up to you if you want to take it out with siege collateral or if you just want to try walling it off with like a hill longbow city. That's up to you. Either one can work and give you pretty good returns. So just take your pick there. But yeah, ultimately, it takes some experience. You just get to practice to see on each difficulty level how many troops you need to bring to win. Building on that, Jedi Ben Zero asks, what is the most effective way to build up a large pre-draft era army? The AI is always 100 times ahead of me, and one time I decided to war longer, I was building units endlessly and neglecting my cities, and the AI was still right behind me in terms of power. How do they do it, and how should I? Well, the AI does it by cheating, or technically being given a handicap, depending on, if their bonuses are being hidden from us, or, if they're agreed upon bonuses from setting the difficulty higher. But anyway, they get a handicap there, and it's significant. So that's how the AI does it. The AI does not do it through any brilliance. You have a couple options here. First of all, you want city specialization. That's the only way on high difficulties to get a decent quantity of troops without utterly mauling your tech rate. Probably want a great person farm to bulb you up in case you need it. You want a couple commerce cities so you don't go on strike when you move into enemy territory. And then you need dedicated hammer cities. Now, if you can, try to unlock Heroic Epic, like get a unit to 10 experience, or if you're charismatic, 8 experience. Because that's a really, really big lift to have one city with plus 100% military production. You get that in a strong hammer city, and a good percentage of your troops are coming from that city, especially in the classical and medieval eras. But even later on, like a Heroic Epic city stays good. Just look what it did with my navy. For building galleons only in one city for the most part, or I think entirely, just so I can keep all the promotions on them. I stopped building galleons pretty soon now, just because I have enough to ferry troops for the rest of the game. That's the kind of thing that can help. And the Heroic Epic is available at Literature, so you can get it early if you get the experience for it. The other way is either working hill mines, preferably grassland hill mines, although you can take what you can get, or whipping. If you have a city with, 1 or 2 good food resources, you can just go for 2 pop whips, and if you care to micro, you can get pretty efficient hammer conversions that way also. Those are really your only options before you can draft or rush by. You either whip or you hammer them out. So it's really just a question of specializing enough cities for military and then getting your good multipliers into your commerce cities so you still don't die out tech-wise. So it takes a little bit of balance, but it can be done. Next up is from ACR1TER. Is that the adaptive combat rifle? Oh man, best weapon ever in Modern Warfare 2. Okay, maybe not. That's for another day. No recoil, but not very strong. Yes. Anyway, he's asking what economy civic is best when and why, or which is usually my favorite. He's saying he doesn't have enough grasp of economy in the game to understand when no foreign trade routes and mercantilism hurts too much, for example. Yeah, it's pretty situational. Mercantilism is at its best when you are large and using representation, because you can deny everyone else trade routes and run them merchant or scientist or whatever specialist you choose and get the representation bonus on it. Communism's pretty straightforward. The more distance maintenance you're dealing with and the more workshops, water mills you have, the better communism is. I think that's my favorite just to default to, because the state property civic, just because it's the easiest in terms of setting it up. Free market's very strong with corporations, or if you're a smallish empire relying heavily on trade routes and you have good quality trade routes, and you can check that just by looking at the commerce you're getting from them and get a reasonable estimate based on how many AIs you've opened borders with and how many cities they have. And then finally, environmentalism. I would use it if you have a lot of windmills, or if you're building factories and you're not relying on workshops because of the health bonus. It can be pretty stout. It makes corporations pretty much more expensive. But if you have a good Wall Street city in the headquarters, it's still not going to be too bad. So those are your options. Also, you can use mercantilism or state property to block foreign corporations if they're getting too expensive. But it really is situational, and it's just a matter of taste in a lot of cases. And the final question for today is from Rick. Yeah, Rick Fee TST, I guess. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Anyway, he's asking if I consider serfdom a useful civic, and the answer is no. Serfdom is awful in ancient starts. You might use it in more recent starts to set up your improvements, but if you're starting from an ancient start, I very rarely find serfdom worth anything at all compared to slavery or caste. So, it's a waste of a civic, but not on your end, just on the game end. So, alright, that takes care of this segment. I'll see you guys in the next one. Me and team, signing out.